The notebook lay open on my desk at home. On the page from my previous trade, the words, "bought above my planned price," were still there, next to the price I had originally intended to wait for. I glanced at it, turned to a fresh page, and wrote the name of another company at the top. Below it were a few figures from its reports, the price range where I wanted to buy, and the things I would need to keep washing if I decided to enter the position. Near the bottom of the page, I wrote down another price and lightly circled it in pencil. If the stock fell to that level, I would sell. The distance between my intended entry and that number was right there in front of me. I knew exactly how much I would lose if my assessment turned out to be wrong. I looked over everything once more. A loss was still within a range I could accept, so I put down the pen. At that point, I didn't even own the stock yet. There were no red numbers on the screen, and there was no decision that needed to be made. The stop-loss level was simply a number near the bottom of a page, as clear as the entry range and the notes written above it. I pushed the notebook aside and went back to work. I answered the first emails of the day, and the spreadsheet on my screen gradually filled up. Every now and then, I switched over to the market board to see where the stock was trading. The price moved around the range I had calculated. There was no sudden rise that made me feel I had to chase it, as I had in the previous trade. When the price I wanted appeared, I opened the order window, entered the number of shares, and checked everything one more time before submitting the order. The buy order was filled within the range I had planned. The stock appeared in my portfolio. My entry price was close to the number written in the notebook, and nothing in the plan needed to be changed. I minimized the trading window, carried my cold coffee into the kitchen, and made another cup. When I returned to the desk, the stock was slightly above my entry price. I glanced at it and went back to work. A phone call ran longer than expected, so I went into the next room to get some documents. I took notes while listening, wrote down a few figures, then sent another email. By the time the call ended, the small profit I had seen earlier had almost disappeared. The stock was trading close to my entry price. I opened the chart, looked over the last few sessions, then minimized it again. There was no new information about the company. Nothing had changed from what I had prepared for. A small intraday move was still well within the range I could accept. But washing machines stopped in the back of the house. I took the clothes outside, hung them up, adjusted a few hangers, then went back inside. As I passed my desk, my eyes stopped at the screen. The position had turned red. The loss was still some distance from my stop-loss level. I pulled the notebook closer, looked at the circled number, then put it back down. The plan did not require me to sell yet. I continued typing, but from that moment on, whenever the cursor paused at the end of a line, my eyes found their way back to the stock. The price kept moving lower, and the distance to my stop-loss level grew smaller. The figures in my work spreadsheet were still in front of me, but there was one row I read twice and still had to start over from the beginning. On the market board, buy and sell orders appeared and disappeared. The circled number in my notebook, which had seemed far below the market earlier, was getting closer to the price on the screen. I picked up my cup and went to get some water. When I came back, only a few price steps remained. A fairly large buy order appeared below the current price, and the stock stopped falling. I put the cup down, but I didn't sit down right away. My eyes stayed on the volume waiting to be bought. If that buying support held, the stock might recover. I pulled out the chair and sat down. The sell window was still closed. Part of the waiting buy order was full. The price moved down another step, leaving it very close to my stop-loss level. When I had written that number in the notebook, everything had seemed simple. If the price fell this far, I would sell. No more guessing. No need to make the decision again. But now, I was watching the buy side more closely than the number I had circled. A new order appeared, and the price moved up. The hand holding the mouse relaxed. It was only a small recovery, but the distance from my stop-loss level had widened again. I turned back to my work and tried to continue reading where I had left off. The market board remained open in one corner of the screen. My phone vibrated with a message that needed a reply. I typed a few lines and sent it. When I put the phone down, The buying support from earlier had weakened. Several sell orders went through one after another. The price on the screen reached the exact number circled in my notebook. I opened the sell window. The full number of shares appeared in the order window. The price was entered exactly as planned. The cursor rested over the confirm button. One click was all it would take to end the trade. I looked at the loss showing in my portfolio. Before I bought the stock, I had already calculated this number. If the trade didn't go the way I expected, this was the amount I had agreed to lose. Back then, it had seemed small enough to accept to exchange for an opportunity. Now that same amount was sitting on the screen in red. All I had to do was click, and it would be deducted from my account. My finger remained on the mouse. A buy order appeared below. The price stopped falling. For a moment, I imagined selling now, only to watch the stock turn around immediately afterward. If it recovered by just 2 or 3 price steps, the loss would be smaller. If buying returned with more strength, I might even be able to exit close to my entry price. The stock moved up one step. I looked at the sell window, then back at the market board. A few more buy orders went through. The red number in my portfolio became slightly smaller. My finger moved away from the mouse. I closed the sell window. Nothing in the plan had changed. There was no new information about the company, but those 2 small steps upward were enough to make me want to give the trade more time. I went back to work, although my attention never really returned. I read one section of a document from beginning to end, then had to read it again. The cup of water was sitting right beside my hand, but I barely touched it. Every time the price moved higher, the decision not to sell seemed a little more reasonable. Every time it moved back down, my eyes returned to the pencil circle in the notebook. The stock continued to move just above my stop-loss level. I told myself that if it fell back again, I would sell. This time, I wouldn't look at the buy side. I wouldn't wait for another recovery. The number had already been written down. All that remained was to follow it. The doorbell rang in the living room. I got up to receive a package, exchanged a few words with the delivery driver, then placed the box on a shelf. When I returned to my desk, the work document was still open in the middle of the screen. But the first thing I looked for was the stock. The price was now below my stop-loss level. I sat down and opened the sell window again. The price at which I could sell immediately was lower than the number circled in the notebook. The difference wasn't large, but the loss in my portfolio had already exceeded the amount I had prepared to accept. The cursor moved back over the confirm button. If I sold now, I would take a larger loss than planned. But if the stock recovered by just a few steps, I could still get out closer to my original stop-loss level. I looked at the buy side and saw a fairly large order had just appeared below. Someone was willing to buy here. I waited. The price stopped falling. The loss stopped growing. A few buy orders went through. I began looking at the distance from the current price back up to my stop-loss level. Instead of the distance, the price had already fallen below it. Just a few steps. But the weighting by volume gradually became smaller. Another sell order went through at a lower price, and the red number in my portfolio increased again. I looked at the confirm button. If I clicked it, the trade would end right here. I wouldn't have to watch every price movement anymore. But my eyes stopped at the falling candle on the chart. The price had dropped fairly quickly. What if this was the final part of the decline? What if I sold at the exact moment everyone else was panicking, only to watch the stock recover afterward? I still didn't click. A small buy order appeared, and the stock recovered by one step. I watched the number on the screen for a while longer. The urgency to sell began to fade. I expanded the chart and noticed a lower price area where a stock had stopped during previous sessions. It wasn't far away. If the price reacted there, selling now might leave me watching the stock recover right after I had accepted a loss larger than planned. I closed the sell window so I could see the chart more clearly. The notebook was still open beside me. The pencil circle around the stop-loss level had not been erased, and no new number had been written in its place. I simply wasn't looking at it the same way I had at the beginning of the day. The package I had received was still sitting in the living room. I got up, cut through the tape, and arranged the things inside off to one side. My phone remained on the desk. The laptop was still open. I tried to finish what was in front of me instead of going straight back into the room. When I returned, the stock had recovered by one step. I pulled out the chair and sat down. More buy orders appeared, and the price moved up again. The loss became smaller. The price on the screen moved closer to the number circled in the notebook. Just a little more. If the stock returned to that exact level, I would sell. I didn't need to recover the entire loss. I just wanted a better price than the one I had seen earlier. I watched each buy order appear, but the recovery didn't last. The volume below weakened. The price stopped, then turned lower again. This time, my stop loss level was even farther above. I looked at the loss on the screen and placed my hand on the mouse. The amount was larger than it had been when I first opened the sell window. And because it was larger, clicking button had become even harder. I no longer wanted only to leave the trade. I wanted to leave it at a price that hurt a little less. A new email appeared in the corner of the screen. I opened it, read a few lines, then realized I couldn't remember what the first sentence had said. I minimized the email. I opened the sell window for the third time. The number of shares was unchanged. I entered the selling price again, once more. The cursor rested over the confirm button. I looked at the notebook. The circled number was still there. And I looked at the loss on the screen. If I sold now, I would have to accept that the price I had written down beforehand had already passed, and I had done nothing when it reached that level. But if I didn't sell yet, the session wasn't over. There would still be another session tomorrow. The company had not disappeared simply because its share price had fallen today. All I needed was one strong enough recovery, and I might still get a better price at which to decide. My hand moved away from the mouse. I closed the sell window. The work documents were still sitting behind the market board, but I no longer tried to continue working. The stop-loss level remained exactly where I had circled it before the trade began. Every time I looked at the page, I knew the price had already fallen through that number. But every time I looked back at the loss on the screen, I wanted to wait just a little longer until the red number became smaller, and then sell. The changes on the market board gradually became less frequent. The stock made a few very small moves upward, but it never returned to the level I was waiting for. When the final numbers stopped moving, the price was still below my stop-loss level, and every share I had bought was still in my portfolio. I closed the trading window and returned the screen to my work documents. The notebook lay beside the keyboard. The pencil circle had not been crossed out. It had not been changed, and no new price had been written in its place. I stood up, carried the cup into the kitchen, and cleared away the remaining packaging from the box that had arrived earlier. The small things around the house continued as they did every day. When I passed the room again, the laptop was still on the desk, and the notebook was still open to the same page. I didn't sit down immediately. After putting away the last few things from the package, I returned, pulled out the chair, and opened my portfolio. The stock was still there. Every share I had bought remained in the account. The loss sat beside it. I pulled the notebook closer. The stop-loss level was on the page. The stock was still in my account. The red number on the screen showed a price below the level where I had once said I would leave the trade. I looked from one to the other for a while. I didn't write anything else. I closed the notebook.